Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Bible study. Today, we are going to be delving and diving into Numbers. Numbers is the next chapter directly after Leviticus. If you haven't watched the previous Bible studies, go watch them because you will not understand this video. Numbers, I thought was going to be boring when I read it, but actually, it's so far, I think is my favorite book. I mean, I've only read like 4, but the tea is so juicy to the brim. I watched my previous videos, and it's so cringe. It's like I'm talking too fast, or too loud, or too slow. It's like I'm just gonna try and mellow out, deliver my ideas clearly. But we'll see. I can't help but yap. So the book of Numbers is 36 chapters, and here is the general narrative overview and what we're going to speak about today. So the first one being the final encampment at Mount Sinai. Now, if you remember, all the way back in Exodus, we left off narratively at Mount Sinai. There was no narrative in Leviticus. It's just all of the laws that Moses received at Mount Sinai. Number 2 is the continuation following the events directly after Exodus. The rest of Numbers is this really long travel, or journey to Moab and preparing to enter Canaan. I'm going to explain all of that in this video. The previous video and the end of Exodus, we have been stuck in this narrative pause, okay? There has been no narrative in Leviticus and towards the end of Exodus. And actually in the beginning of Numbers, like the first start of Numbers, we're still in this grander narrative that is kind of like a subversion from the main plot. Moses is receiving all of the laws at the foot of Mount Sinai, and we have been reading all of these laws. So we are finally moving on from that and going back to the narrative in Numbers. So after we finish the remaining laws in Numbers, which are quite honestly just a repetition of what we've already seen in Leviticus, they're all at camp at Mount Sinai, and half of the Israelites have just been wiped out because they were worshiping the golden cow. Numbers spans a period of 40 years of wandering all the way to Moab, right? And then preparing to go into Canaan. Now, this whole time, all of the Pentateuch, right? We have been waiting to get to the promised land that God has promised Abraham all the way back in Genesis, right? It's all been leading up to this moment. So we are finally here. We are finally we're breaking it down, right? Girl, let me tell you what happened. Here's where it begins. So Moses has received all of these laws, all of the various instructions for repentance, all of the procedures for worship. They've constructed the tabernacle, which is the portable residence, where they can worship God and Moses can commune with God. So they did all that, right? Now, Moses and Aaron, following God's orders, needs to take a census of the entire Israeli population. Well, not the entire population, only the men that are of age, which is 20 or older, the men of fighting age. They need to take a census of all of these men to figure out their military prowess. To facilitate this process of taking a census, Moses and Aaron recruit members of each house of Israel, which I believe I explained this before, but there are 12 different houses of Israel. Here they are somewhere on the screen. So Moses and Aaron get one from each house to kind of take their numbers of each house, and then they add them up together. So all of the men of fighting age, which is 20 and above, totals to 603,550 men that are of fighting age. That's a lot of people, actually. All of these people, and that's not including the women, children, and elderly, are all traveling to Moab. All these people are going on this 40-year journey to the promised land. This census included every house in Israel except the house of Levi. The house of Levi has a special place in the community of Israel. So I don't know if you guys remember, but way back in Exodus, actually, when we were first introduced to Moses and to Aaron, I explained to you that Aaron eventually will become the priestly line. Aaron is the first priest. His lineage are meant to be priests as well. So the house of Levi is excluded from the census because their house is specifically meant to serve Aaron and his lineage in their priestly endeavors. So make their garments, facilitate their job, etc., right? In Numbers chapter 5, there's this whole weird ritual that God is describing. It's weird chapter where it's like this ritual and what to do if women are jealous, girl, or if women are unfaithful. It's so weird. I've spoken many times about what I think about this book in regards to misogyny. Actually, in the last video I spoke about it. Or maybe at this point one day I'm going to do this whole big video on misogyny, because it just permeates every aspect and angle of this book, that it just, at this point, it needs to have its own video. But clearly this is weird. And then there's some like witchcraft. It's like blood on the, you have to put the blood on the walls, and it's weird. It's very weird, and it kind of implies that men and women are capable of witchcraft. I feel like if you ask most reasonable people, they will say no, witchcraft is not real. But in this book, there's a lot of witchcraft from ordinary men. We're going to see later on too, but this is a good example as well. So kind of it begs the question, in all the way back in Exodus, we saw that too, with the Pharaoh's men kind of mimicking God's power, like in the whole back and forth thing. And now we're seeing it again, like with this ritualistic stuff. I wonder if people who believe this faith believe that men and women are capable of magic as well, because these are ordinary people, and these are instructions from God that are kind of witchy, if you will. So anyways, we're at Mount Sinai, and we're starting to make preparations for departure. All that's, they're taking their census to see like how many people they got, their military power, all that stuff. Moses is making final preparations in the tabernacle to make sure everything is Gucci for them to leave. Moses and Aaron start assigning duties to, the different tribal leaders, making sure everyone's good. Like, okay, you ready to go? Like, make sure, yeah. And while all that is happening, the first Passover takes place. Now, I don't know if you remember, but God made Passover all the way back in Exodus, right? Passover is to celebrate when God has freed his people from their slavery in Egypt. So it's been 1 year since they left Egypt. So God decides that in order for the Israelites to know where they need to go, he will come down in this cloud of fire, and he'll move from Sinai and go somewhere, and that way they'll see in the distance, like, oh, there's this big ass fire cloud, and we need to go over there. So wherever the cloud goes, the Israelites go, eventually leading out to Moab. Okay. They also craft these like trumpets, these silver trumpets, for different reasons. Some are for if they're going to war, some are for gathering everyone at the tabernacle whenever they need to worship God or commune with God or whatever, right? So guys, finally, on the second year, right, since it's been 1 year since I left Egypt, on the second year of the second month, on the 20th day, a month later from where we are narratively, they finally leave Mount Sinai. And girl, the journey starts. They're about to walk boots all the way to Moab for 40 years, starting now. So the cloud, God's fire cloud, lifts up into the sky, goes all the way to Paran. Here's the map. And so the Israelites, they're like, okay, let's go to Paran. We see the cloud in the distance, let's go. So they all move and leave Mount Sinai, right? Here's the problem. Girl, the Israelites are over it. They're complaining. They're like, oh my God, we're hungry. Why would we go on this journey when there's no meat? Like, Moses, we should have stayed in Egypt. We should have just been slaves. At least we had some goat. At least we had some grilled pork chops. At least we had some soda pop. At least we had X, Y, and Z, right? And this turns into like a whole drama. Some people die because, God is mad. He's like, how are you complaining? Like, I just delivered you. But it turns into a whole drama. We don't need to get into the details. Some people die. Aaron's wife is excluded from camp for 7 days. God is about to give it up to the Israelites. He's like, you're really complaining? I just delivered you from from slavery. Like, how are you gonna turn on me like that? But Moses is like, hold on, God. Let me talk to my people, get them right. Whatever. Let's move on. Eventually, they arrive in Paran and set up camp around God's fiery smoke cloud. So essentially what happens now at Paran, Moses is like, we need to kind of figure out what Canaan is looking like. We don't know anything about this place, actually. We need to go send some scouts there, right? So Moses sends those same tribal leaders that kind of took the census, he sends them as scouts all the way to Canaan to kind of, get the tea and report back, right? So they leave for 40 days, they're gone, and then they come back. When they come back, they're like, guys, this land is amazing. It flows with milk and honey. There's bees and beautiful things. They bring back some fruit, and they're like, look at this delicious fruit, period, right? Here's the problem. All of those leaders, all of those scouts, except for two people, and remember these two people, Joshua, who his name formerly was Hosea, but Moses changed his name. So Joshua and Caleb. All of those scouts except those two people, Joshua and Caleb, said, yeah, everything's great. The land is amazing and beautiful, but they got it. Like, they just are so strong. The Canaanites, we if we go there, we're going to get murked. So we cannot go there. We have to turn back. So then all of the Israelites started to freak out. All of the Hebrew people started to freak out, and we're like, bruh, like, they spoke out against Yahweh specifically, though, this time. They were like, bruh, Yahweh, you delivered us from Egypt just to deliver us to our downfall again? Bitch, like, they're so mad. We need to leave. And some people actually do try and go back to Egypt. So, guys, Yahweh is like,
I can't stand you ungrateful bitches. You ungrateful bitches need Jesus.
I'm done with you. I've had enough. Y'all are just like so ungrateful. So what does God do? God decides, I'm going to kill everybody. And like this covenant thing, I'm just going to kind of kill everyone, restart the covenant with only Moses, right? Only Moses and his brother are going to the promised land. The rest of you guys are just like annoying, right? And you're ungrateful. But what's really interesting is Moses kind of steps in and is like, wait a minute, Yahweh, hold on. This is not a good idea. Moses is kind of coming to God saying, like almost as like a partner or like a confidant, which I guess in essence they are, as if two humans were like, wait a minute, sis, like, hold on, like two friends. Moses is doing essentially PR for Yahweh. And Moses reminds God of why he's doing this whole thing in the first place, which is to spread his own infamy. So Moses kind of says, God, Yahweh, sis, if you kill all of the Israelites, if you kill all your people, no one's gonna kind of worship you anymore. They're gonna think you're this crazy God who brought these people all the way out to the desert just to slice and dice and chop and screw and murk all of your people. This whole plan of yours will flop. So God's like, you're right, Moses. I'm not gonna kill everybody, but I am going to get my lick back, and they are going to respect me, period. So Yahweh is like, Moses, you're right. I'll relax. But I am going to plague and murder all of those scouts because they just are gossiping and causing all this chaos. So Yahweh decides to kind of plague and murder all of the scouts. And then he looks to all the people. He's like, anyone who murmured, anyone who was popping it, anyone who was talking about me and murmuring and doing all of that, none of you will inherit the promised land. You're going to be forced to wander the desert until you die, essentially. Your kids will inherit the promised land, but all of you that are alive right now will not. So yeah, a whole generation, that entire generation basically just flopped their way out of the covenant. But it's okay because I guess their children will, but it's kind of sad that they're doing they're still going to travel a little bit until they die, but they will not go into the promised land. They'll just have to wander the desert and die. And some Israelites are so like distressed and like, oh my God, like what do we do? That they decide to try and enter Canaan, they leave and try to enter Canaan anyway, and basically they get beat up, like they get jumped by the Canaanites. The Canaanites murder those who attempted to go to Canaan anyways, which this emphasizes without God they cannot enter into Canaan, right? After that whole drama, right, they're marching into the wilderness through the sea of reeds. So y'all, in the very next chapter, here we go again with some more drama. 250 Israelites form this uprising against Moses and Aaron, which essentially in this tale is kind of like going against Yahweh. Yahweh has such a close relationship with Moses and Aaron. It's such to three individuals from two houses. They kind of form this uprising against Moses and Aaron, and they start to challenge the kind of exclusivity that Moses and Aaron have in their respective positions. Like Moses is so close to God, and he kind of is the conduit for God's both magical power or whatever, as well as his instructions for the Israelites. And then Aaron is kind of the priestly lineage. Like honestly, he did most of the hard work that Moses gets credit for historically, but whatever. So they're kind of like, this isn't fair. Like, you think you're that bitch, but like you're not eating it up. God doesn't even play around this time. He's like, oh no, please. So he literally opening up the earth. This is how the book puts it. He opens the earth and they fall directly into it and they are sent to Sheol. I don't know what Sheol is. The way it's written, it seems to be like some kind of hellish place or hell or whatever. So that's that. And then the rest of them, like there's not all of them go to Sheol, but some of them do. And then the other ones who rebelled are all burned alive. Something that will be interesting is I wonder if Sheol will be mentioned in the New Testament. I doubt it, but we'll see. Because it doesn't seem to be the same kind of hell, if you will. So, all that happens, right? The next chapter, literally the next chapter, like over 14,000 Israelites, again, are mad, annoyed, complaining. They're like, girl, this is just like, we've been traveling for years. At this point, they've been traveling for some years now. This is just a nightmare. God is, again, like,
so you want to get sinned? Oh, so you want to get sinned? No. You want to get...
I'm not about to play with you. And he kills all of them, like, instantly. He's like, goodbye. You're gone. We need to take another census, to be honest, because at this point, so many people have died, right? Yahweh must be so over it. Like, if I was Yahweh, and I just delivered all of these people from their literal, like, they literally were enslaved, and they're suffering and all this stuff, and I just delivered all these people, even though it's taking 40 years, whatever, and you have the audacity to complain and say that, I don't have any steak, I don't have any lobster, I'm hungry, like, I would be like, girl, bye, like, you know. Then again, you have to think about it. Yahweh is kind of doing this whole thing for selfish reasons, essentially. We've seen several scriptures pointing to the fact that the only reason he's even doing this, the only reason he chose Abraham, the only reason he is choosing to deliver these people from their hardships is so that they will spread his infamy. Story-wise, like plot-wise, I would say, whose side am I on? I don't know, because it's like, you're only delivering me so that you can get some clout. And then it's like, but nonetheless, you were delivered from slavery, so how are you going to complain? So, huge time jump. We have now been traveling the wilderness for 40 years. So this is the 40th year, and the Israelites have just arrived in Zin, which is the wilderness in Kadesh. They arrive on the new moon of the 40th year. So they settle there. I mean, they're almost done with their whole journey, right? We're nearly arriving at the end of this entire narrative for the past few books. They're nearly there. But guess what? They're complaining again.
Again. Nothing new, nothing changed, same old shit.
So, shocker, right? Basically, they're like, we're thirsty, there's no water, we're dying, blase, blase, blah. They're wishing again that they were slaves. I think, honestly, Yahweh should just, like, leave, I guess, go to another planet and try again, because they're missing the assignment, no shade. So, this next part is kind of confusing. I didn't fully grasp it when I was reading it. Essentially what happens is, they're all complaining, they're thirsty or whatever. So God tells Moses, okay, go out to them, bring them in front of this rock and order water from the rock, okay, so that their thirst will be quenched. Moses, to me, seems to do exactly that. He takes his staff, smacks the rock, and water comes out. Their thirst is quenched. But God gets really mad with Moses, which I don't understand exactly why, because it seems that he did exactly what Yahweh has asked of him, right? It's either one of two things, I guess. Yahweh tells him to verbally command water from the rock, so perhaps that's why Yahweh is angered, like he didn't follow his instructions to a T. Or when he was talking about the fact that he did this, like that he's completed this action that God has commanded him, he said the word we, and kind of like attributed this miracle to like the power of both of them, as opposed to like, this is Yahweh. So maybe God is like, you couldn't have done this without me. I don't know. We do know that Yahweh is like a jealous kind of God who wants to be revered and worshipped so bad. But whatever, that happens. And this kind of, I think, changes the relationship between Yahweh and Moses. Yahweh was really disappointed in Moses, which I don't really know why. Like, it's not that big of a deal now. So Right now they're at Kadesh, and the plan right now is to just enter Canaan through the south. Unfortunately, that does not work out. The king of Canaan sends his army to kind of prevent them from entering. Moses is like, new plan. We're going to follow this main road east, travel north through Edom to Moab, and then just cross the Jordan River to the promised land. In order to do that, they need permission from the king of Edom to go through their lands. So Moses sends 2 letters. Can we cross through your land? The king of Edom says no both times, and actually on the second time he sends his army to kind of prevent them, like, you're not coming in here. And Moses kind of gathers everyone and is like, we don't want any smoke, so let's retreat. Okay, we're not gonna, let's stay far back, right? Eventually just go like straight up to the border of Edom at this mountain called Hor, or Hour, I guess, I don't know, Hour. And they settle there. Now here there's a little pause, but for some reason, God instructs Moses to kind of strip Aaron of his priestly title and all of his, priestly adornments, because he needs to be punished for the whole water rock thing, which does not make sense because Moses is the one who did the water rock thing and carried out this action. Aaron didn't really have anything to do with it, so I don't know why Aaron is being punished for the actions of Moses. But Moses does what God says, and he, gets rid of all of the adornments, kind of like says, sorry, brother, you flop. And they leave him there to die, and he dies. So Aaron's son becomes a new kind of head priest, head bitch in charge. Aaron just got left behind by all his people after he did all of that, and God says, Moses, you want to play? Your brother's dead.
Oh!
Then the king of Canaan, he's like, y'all think you're going to come to my land and take my stuff? Watch this. He sends an army to confront the Israelites. And so a whole battle ensues, right? The Canaanites take some of the Israelites captive. Israelites are in jail, like, help, please. Beg God to deliver them and to save them. And God does. So after that, the Israelites are like,
please, just give us a break.
This is crazy. This is too much. We have nowhere to go. We asked Edom to go there. He said, no, we can't go to the south. The Canaanites are attacking us. We just should have stayed slaves. And God is like, bitch,
Shut the fuck up!
you sound stupid as fuck. Like, you should have more faith in me. You guys keep playing with me. And he sends like these snakes that like bite them and poison them, and so they die. Moses is like, okay, God, wait, okay, like you can't kill everybody. Like at this point, we're literally basically, we're here. We're essentially here. We've come too far. It's been 40 years that we've been traveling. So God is like, okay, fine. The Israelites are like, we've had enough. Y'all want to keep playing? We have nowhere to go. It's time to take action into our own hands. Here's what happens. All the Israelites go on this big campaign. They literally are going city to city, killing, stealing land, doing what they want to do. Invading, killing, invading every city until they get to where they want. Sounds familiar? So while all that is happening, they end up scaring this leader in one of those neighboring regions called Balak, as well as scaring this kind of non-Israelite prophet and kind of like magician named Balaam. There's this whole long portion that we don't really care about, but essentially what happens and what takes place here is Barak kind of recruits Balaam, who is like this magical figure and prophet, to kind of curse the Israelites so that they will not be successful in their endeavors, stop killing everybody and invading and just doing what they want to do. The problem is God then recruits Balaam and kind of says to Balaam, hold on. While Balaam was on his donkey traveling, he was like, wait a minute, Balaam, don't fight for the ops. Don't curse my people, right? Please don't curse my people. And just do what I say, right? And Balaam was like, okay, like whatever. What's interesting about this short little tale, Barak gets really mad, actually. He's like, what the fuck? Like, I recruited you to curse them and you're working for the ops. Ops being Yahweh. What's funny is that I would think that an all-powerful, all-knowing, God or whatever would have the ability to kind of counter some random human's magic. More and more, it seems like God is just like a player on a board, just like everybody else. Why do you have to go out of your way to prevent some random guy cursing Israel? So back to the main story, the main plot. They've been to a bunch of cities, just killing people left and right. They are right now in the Midian. They're basically in Moab, right? This city called Shittim. And while all of that, like, Balaam curse stuff was happening, they're taking a little pause in Shittim, and some of the Israelite men are whoring around, as the Bible puts it. And they're like, And so they have this, like, orgy. The problem is, after they got involved with these Moab women, the Israelites started worshiping those women's god, and this god is called Baal Peor. This is the second deity that we've encountered besides God, right? I don't know who Baal Peor is. I will have to figure that out, but for the moment I don't know. And God gets super mad, like super tight, and he's like, the audacity. So what he does, he instructs Moses, all of the people who were engaged in this, like, kind of like ritualistic orgy thing, impale them like Mesmer, and set it up so that everyone can see. This is how I give it up for people who betray me. And then also a plague breaks out, and like 24,000 Israelites die. It's almost like the Israelites don't want to be saved. They be saved, don't save her. She don't want to be saved, don't save her. Because they just, like, it's like every other second, every other moment in this book, in this chapter, Numbers, they are rebelling. So after that, a bunch happens that we don't really care about. But there's another portion which is so annoying, which again attests to the bizarre and weird treatment of women. So again, if you're a woman in this religion, girl, step your cookies up, because it's not giving. Essentially, women are not allowed to make vows or oaths. All those times, girls, where you're saying, on God this, on God that, I swear this, I promise that, you're not allowed to unless you have the permission from your father if you live with him, or your husband if you live with him, or some man. You can't make an oath on your own. That's crazy. The next time I see a religious woman and she's popping it, I'm going to be like, wait a minute, girl. Know your place. You believe in this religion so bad, hush. Anyways, back to the story. So what happens next? So God tells the Israelites, you know all that Baal Peor stuff, like all those Israelites that you already murdered for worshiping him, you guys need to get your lick back. Why? I don't know. Because God already got his lick back. He killed everybody. So God tells them to go to war, and they do exactly that. They go to war, and we can imagine that this is probably for some months. And the Israelites win the war. They take captive all of the women and children. They kill all of the men, every last one. And side note, they kill Balaam. Do you remember Balaam, the guy that God recruited? It was like, please don't curse my people. They kill him. That is, for me, that is so wrong. Like, Balaam could have done damage, but God said, girl, be on my side, like I'm Yahweh. And then his people kill him anyways. Like, that is so whatever. Anyways, they did their big one. No shade. Like, they killed everybody, right? So now they're literally directly east of Canaan, right? And so now Moses and everyone in all the tribes of Israel, they're kind of starting to, like, map out Canaan. Like, they're sending recruits, and they're like, we got to figure out where are different tribes. Like, there's 9.5 tribes, right? Because, there used to be 12. One, the Levites don't get, like, land exactly. They get more of, like, a settlement because they are meant to serve the priestly house that is Aaron's lineage. And then there's 2 tribes that were wiped out. So awkward. So there's like 9.5, I guess, tribes. So they need to map that out. They need to figure out, when, where, how, all that stuff before they enter into Canaan. So here's what God tells them, right? This is really important. God tells them, when you enter Canaan, you need to kill everyone, every single person, man, woman, or child. Because if you don't do that, if you leave even one, they're going to rise up against you, and they're going to be bitter and mad and foster resentment, and they will rise against you, and the land will never be stable, and you'll be put out from the land. Absolutely complete genocide. Sound familiar? So he says, when you cross the Jordan River, you got to do, you just have to do your big one. Like, you just got to kill them. And God kind of says this with, like, unwavering, like, he doesn't even flinch. Your commandments, your major commandment's going to be not to murder, yet you instruct your people to absolutely murder and commit this genocide, going against your own principles. You're asking them to do the very thing that you teach against. God also says, if you do not kill every single one, you got to deal with me, boo. He says, if you don't get everybody, then I'm going to do to you what you were supposed to do to them. So, it's the night before. It's finally time. We are finally just across the river from the promised land. And this is where Numbers ends. Girl. I know, like, me, I was like, girl, like, we've been, like, it's like you keep putting this in my face. Like, I want to know what happens when they finally get to the promised land. The next chapter is Deuteronomy. I pronounced Deuteronomy so wrong in my previous video. It's embarrassing, but whatever. I had a lisp when I was growing up, so don't judge me. But I think that we need to have a much larger discussion about Israel today, and kind of the parallels to, you know, their alleged origins according to their sacred text. So clearly, we're following this whole narrative where God is delivering, or he has made someone else's land the kind of fruit of Israel's eye. The goal is to kind of get them to this land that doesn't belong to them. Clearly, we can draw some comparisons to what's going on today with Israel, modern day Israel. So the thing is, Israel today, like, quite publicly and frequently uses the Bible for justification for their existence, because Israel as a modern nation state is very young, 1940s-ish. The problem is when you use the Bible for your justification, which we should, first of all, never use religious text for any justification on governance, intergovernance, international, whatever, political reasons, ever. But if you're going to, it's quite clear that the Israelites or Hebrew people were never native to this land, never indigenous to this land. They were always kind of foreigners and invaders to this land. We will get into the exact history of modern day Israel in another video, but often when you bring up these points, you hear, well, the Jewish population needs a kind of state that can offer protection given the events of the Holocaust and just the historical persecution in general, which obviously we can't ignore. That is true. That is an aspect of reality that a lot of Jewish people have to deal with. The problem is that just is not a thing. That's never been a thing for any discriminated group. For example, there are countless millions of displaced indigenous and or African populations across the globe. Do we get our own ethno state? Like, do they get their own kind of state just because they've gone through stuff? I'm not saying, like, you know, I'm just saying that that's not a thing. That has never been a thing. There is not another example of that happening, right? The Belgian genocide in the Congo, right? Death on a scale you cannot imagine. The European conquest in the Americas. Death on a scale that you just cannot comprehend. You know, these things, I'm not comparing tragedies. Clearly the Holocaust is wrong and was horrible and was death, you know, horrific death. It's just not the only example. Not even close. And it's just not the worst. The persecution of black and brown people spanning into the 20th century. If you really want to be real, neo-slavery today is what we're dealing with, to be honest. But let's just keep it with chattel slavery, right? With black and brown people in the Americas. All of the black and brown people in the European colonies, in Australia, like, you know, do all of those people, those displaced people, do we get to come now and say, this is our land, give us this land, despite whoever lives there? No. If black people, I'm not native to the Americas, historically, you know, my lineage, right? Clearly I'm black, I'm of African descent. Do I now, let's say I found out that I was Kenyan or something or whatever, and let's say I go now, all black people now, you know, we all decide to go back to our respective countries and say, this is our land, we're going back. No, that's not a thing, and that would never be a thing. That's crazy, because there's people who live there now and who have always lived there. We can't just, black people can't come back because we have a uniform culture now and go back and pick up this piece of land. I know there was an attempt, but it didn't work out because that's crazy. Can the Native Americans, indigenous Americans, say to all those Europeans, go? What about, or South Africa? Like, it's just like, that's not realistic, and that's not ever going to happen. And Jewish people are not unique in the fact that they've had discrimination and suffering in this world historically. They're just not unique in that fact. So that is crazy. And it also doesn't help that most of the people who are taking advantage of this right to return thing are really of European descent. Okay, let's just keep it a buck. Let's keep it a band. Like, it's giving colonizer. That's just what they do. Biblically, it gives colonizer. Right now, it gives colonizer. Yeah, so, you know, you can clearly fill in the blanks. You can see the patterns. One day I'm going to do a much longer video, and actually in Deuteronomy, the next chapter, we will speak a lot about this as well. But yeah, it's just so This religion gets on my nerves. Like, it's funny that you read it. Like all that we spoke about, to use the Bible as justification for why Israel should exist is stupid, right? Because we clearly see they've never been the good guys. They've never, like, if you want to use the Bible, they're not the good guys in the Bible either. You know what I mean? Like, so the last video I said that I would come to you guys and say and have answers for who is Melech, which was this deity that was frequently being referenced. The thing is, Boo, I don't know, but he seems to be this religious figure where I guess in the Jewish community he's kind of portrayed as this like child sacrificial god or something, but we just don't know. Like, that's complete speculation and we have no idea who this is. But he is another deity, believed to be another deity, kind of like Baal Peor. Do you believe in magic? Go away. There's a fruit fly in here and she's mad pregnant. Oh, did you I don't think I got her. Why are there always flies in my house? Girl, boo, move. Anyway, so what was I saying? Yeah, do you guys believe in magic? Christian or not? Jewish or not? Religious or not? I don't believe in magic. The evidence for it is poor. Clearly in the Bible, in the Old Testament or the Tanak or whatever. To not believe in magic is to kind of counter a lot of the narrative and plot in the Tanak. But obviously no one has ever seen examples of magic with their two eyes. So in the next chapter, we'll pick up where we left off. Yeah, so thanks for watching and goodbye.